Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Natsu had dual elements. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 38, Fantasia. 2 days later. With the internal battle for Fairy Tail now over, the town of Magnolia has returned to celebrating the Harvest Festival, almost if nothing had even happened. The scars and bruises earned during the fight only served to strengthen the bonds between Fairy Tail's members. Within Fairy Tail's guild hall, most of its members were laughing, drinking, and being as rowdy as usual. Although most of them were covered in gauze and bandages, evidence of the fierce battle they had all fought. However, all the clamor within the guild silenced when Urza suddenly walked out of the guild's infirmary, where Master Makarov was currently resting. Well everyone, it looks like poorly Yusaka-san managed to save Master from immediate danger, Urza announced, walking towards where most of the other guild members were gathered. Everyone stopped what they were doing to listen to what the scarlet-haired knight had to say. You can all rest easy now, Master is going to be just fine. That's amazing news. Lucy cheered with a bright smile, as she clapped her hands together. I was so worried after Levy-chan told me what happened. Heh, you're gonna need a whole damn army to take Ji-chan out. Gray added with a smirk, slapping his hand onto the table. There's no way he'd go down so easy. That's true, but he's definitely starting to show his age, Urza said with a sad smile, rubbing her arm almost nervously. If he's put under too much stress, his condition could worsen again. I'd like you all to please keep that in mind. Are we really still going to put on the Fantasia parade in our sorry state? Elfman asked, as he stared down at the bandages wrapped around his chest and stomach. I mean, we all kinda look like shit right now. Well, the master still wants the parade to go on, so... Urza replied, crossing her arms over her chest and shaking her head. And I understand why he wants to do this. It's in situations like this that we need a distraction, something to take our minds off our worries. Juvia is really looking forward to seeing the Fantasia parade. Juvia chirped with a bright smile, as she practically shook with excitement. Even while in Phantom Lord I heard stories about how amazing it was. What are you talking about, girl? Kana asked with a smirk, patting Juvia on the shoulder. You're taking part in the festival, not watching. What? Juvia exclaimed, as her ocean blue eyes shot open in shock. But Juvia only joined the guild recently, Juvia couldn't. Sure you can. Kana exclaimed, wrapping her arm around Juvia's neck and pulling her close. A sexy girl like you, I know you'll do awesome. Sizukana-san. Juvia stuttered out, as her face burned bright red and steam blew out from her ears. With so many people injured, we need anyone who can still move around to participate. Happy explained, before taking a bite of his fish. Huh? Does that mean I'll have to take part too? Lucy asked, pointing to herself. What about Natsu and Gajiel? Will they be able to join in? I haven't seen Natsu in almost 2 days. I don't know, I haven't seen Flame Brain or Gajiel in a while either. Gray replied, as he stroked his chin. They both kinda just disappeared once things settled down after they fought against Laxus. They should both be here pretty soon, Elfman said, surprising both Gray and Lucy. My Nachan and Gajiel are actually taking care of Natsu. Apparently Natsu got really banged up during his fight with Laxus, so Nachan offered to patch them both up. Then Gajiel said something about owing Natsu a favor, so he decided to stay and help Nachan out. They've been over his house the past 2 days. Is that so? Lucy muttered, a small smirk spreading across her face. Looks like Mira-san is starting to make her move. Well, I wish her luck since she is the one who thought of sharing Natsu in the first place. All right, easy with him, Gajiel, he's still pretty hurt. As if on cue, Mira-jane's sweet, yet concerned, voice was heard just outside the guild's front doors. Slowly the front doors slid open, revealing Gajiel supporting a heavily bandaged Natsu. Gajeel on the other hand only had a few bandages on his arms, with some gauze wrapped around his forehead. Other than that he looked largely uninjured. Following right behind them was Mira Jane, who was still carrying a pouch full of basic medical supplies. Set him down by everyone else, Gajeel.
Got it. Gajeel said, as he helped Natsu walk over towards an empty seat between Lucy and Urza.
With a pained grunt, Natsu plopped down into the seat, immediately resting his head on the table.
You okay here, Salamander?
Yeah, I'm good, Gajeel. Natsu replied weakly, giving the Iron Dragon Slayer a thumbs up.
Thanks for all your help. Gee, don't mention it.
Gajeel said with a smirk, before he spotted Levi out of the corner of his eye.
I'll see you later, Salamander. I have something I need to do.
Yeah, just go talk to her already.
Natsu said, waving Gajeel away. Just try not to act like an idiot. Are you okay, Natsu?
Lucy asked, as she gently rubbed the pink-haired Dragon Slayer's lower back.
Does anything still hurt?
Urza added, rubbing Natsu's upper back, her hand just above Lucy's.
Not really.
I mean, my whole body still aches a little, but other than that I'm okay. Natsu replied, as he smiled brightly at both his mates. I should still be able to perform in the Fantasia parade.
Now Natsu, please don't go pushing yourself.
Mira Jane scolded lightly, sitting on the other side of the table. You were injured pretty bad when you fought against Laxus, and I don't want you putting any unneeded stress on your wounds.
Don't worry, Mira, I'll take it easy.
Natsu reassured, as he perked up in his seat, now sitting up straight. But there's no way I can miss out participating in the parade, especially since everyone else is going to be chipping in. Mira, I really must thank you for taking care of Natsu these past few days. Urza said, resting her hand on top of Mira Jane's and giving it a light squeeze. You know I can be a real klutz sometimes, and medicine definitely isn't my area of expertise. I'm afraid I might have hurt Natsu instead of healing him.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mira-san.
Lucy said, as she chuckled lightly and rubbed the back of her neck.
I'm no good with medicine either. I mean, I even have a hard time putting on a band-aid sometimes.
You can drop the sand, Lucy, no need to be so formal with me anymore. Mira Jane said with a bright smile, before waving her hand dismissively.
And there's no need to thank me. Natsu was a very special person to me, and I was happy to help him out.
Especially after he went through all that work to beat that bastard Laxus.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Lucy huffed angrily, as she crossed her arms underneath her impressive bust.
Who the hell does he think he is, pulling a stunt like that?
He could have seriously killed someone during that stupid game. I agree that what Laxus did was inexcusable and that he should be punished, but that's all in the past now. Urza said, releasing Mira Jane's hand so that she could ruffle Natsu's hair, much to his annoyance. Thanks to all our efforts, our troubles within the guild are over for the moment. As soon as these words left Urza's mouth, the guild's front doors opened once again. All sound within the guild silenced, and everyone stared in wide-eyed shock, as Laxus slowly entered the guild.
Compared Natsu, Laxus definitely looked far worse off.
His entire torso was completely covered in gauze, with some around his forehead and arms as well. Laxus also had several bandages covering wounds on his face. Lastly, no one aside from Natsu seemed to notice that Laxus' clenched fist appeared to be twitching ever so slightly, likely an after effect from being assaulted by so much powerful electricity. Laxus hadn't taken 10 steps into the guild hall, before he was stopped by a group of fairy tale mages, all of them hassling and yelling at him. Having a general idea of why Laxus was even at the guild, Natsu released light sigh and started to get out of his seat.
Natsu?
Lucy asked, as she quirked an eyebrow in confusion.
Where are you going?
I'll be right back, Luz. Natsu said, making his way towards the crowd that was surrounding Laxus. Lucy tried to follow after Natsu, but she was stopped when Mira Jane and Urza grabbed her wrist and arm. Looking back, Lucy saw that both of them were shaking their heads.
Lucy got the message and sat back in her seat.
Natsu was now at the edge of the small crowd, and began to force his way to center. After a few moments, Natsu in the front of the crowd, now face to face with Laxus.
Both Natsu and Laxus locked eyes instantly, neither of them daring to break eye contact.
A hush fell over the crowd, as they awaited to see if another fight would break out. But to everyone's surprise, Natsu suddenly stepped aside, gesturing towards a door near the back of the guild.
Ji-chan is in the medical office back there, I suggest you go see him.
Laxus simply stared at Natsu for several moments, before making his way towards the door Natsu had pointed to. However, before Laxus walked past Natsu, he briefly patted the pink-haired dragon slayer's shoulder.
Thanks, Natsu.
With those final words, Laxus made his way through the crowd of people and entered the medical office.
Are you sure that was good idea, letting Laxus through like that?
Gray asked, as he stood next to Natsu, hands shoved in his pockets. I mean, he did just try to take control of Fairy Tail by force.
It'll be fine, Natsu said, staring at the door to medical office. This is something that needed to be done. With Fairy Tail's medical office.
Closing the door behind him, Laxus immediately spotted his grandfather lying on a bed on the other side of the room. Makarov seemed to notice Laxus enter the room, but continued to stare up at ceiling. Not feeling particularly comfortable getting any closer, Laxus decided to lean against the wall right next to the door, crossing his arms over his chest. Neither man said anything for several tense moments, both avoiding the other's gaze. After almost 5 minutes of awkward silence, Laxus tightly balled his fists and finally spoke up.
Those guys out there sure are noisy,
Laxus said, as he continued to stare at the wall next to him.
I wish they'd at least try to keep it down sometimes.
Once again silence fell upon the room, as Makarov refused to respond to Laxus' comment. But after another minute, Makarov released a heavy sigh and finally sat up in his bed.
Laxus, do you understand the severity of what you've done? Makarov asked, turning to look his grandson in the eyes.
However, Makarov was irritated when Laxus continued to avoid his gaze.
Look me in the eyes, boy. It's the least you can do after what you've done.
Laxus seemed to ignore Makarov for several moments, but eventually he did turn to face him. Listen here, Laxus, because I won't repeat myself.
Do you understand what a guild really is? It's a gathering place for nakama.
It's a place to get together and go on missions. And to some kids who don't have anywhere else to go, it's their home, a place where they belong.
It doesn't belong to you, or anyone else for that matter.
This guild was founded upon the trust and honor of each individual member, and that is how we've formed stronger and firmer bonds than anyone else you'll ever meet. With this stunt you just pulled, you have violated that honor and put your nakama's lives in danger. I'm sorry, but this is not a crime I can forgive.
I understand, and I'll accept any punishment you deem fitting, Laxus said, as he tightly clenched his fists.
Releasing a light sigh, Laxus stared down at his balled fist. I just wanted to make this guild stronger.
Honestly.
You're such a strange man, I don't know where you get it from, Makarov said, grunting softly as he hopped off his bed.
Clasping his hands behind his back, Makarov walked over to Laxus. You need to remember to let some of that pressure off your shoulders from time to time.
If you do, you might just start to see things you've been missing this whole time, or hearing words you've never bothered to listen to.
A soft smile suddenly spread across Makarov's face. Life is something you're supposed to enjoy, remember that. Laxus didn't say anything, but Makarov could tell that he understood what he was being told. You know, watching over you as you grew up was my entire reason for living. I didn't need you to be strong or smart, all I wanted in life was for you to be happy. That was my only desire.
Suddenly Laxus inhaled deeply through his nose, attempting to stop tears from forming in his eyes.
Laxus.
Makarov tightly balled his fists, doing everything he could to prepare himself for what he was about to say.
With a strong swipe of his arm, Makarov gestured towards the door.
You are hereby excommunicated from this guild. Laxus' eyes widened in shock, and he simply stood in place for several moments, his entire body shaking slightly. But once the situation started to really sink in, Laxus realized that there was no other option for him after what he had done. Releasing a shaky breath, Laxus finally spoke up.
Sure, that makes sense, you made the right decision.
Quickly turning around, Laxus began to exit the room.
As Laxus walked away, Makarov turned his back to him. "Thanks for everything, I really mean it." With a small smile, Laxus opened the door to the medical office. "Gramps, take care of yourself." With those last words, Laxus walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. "Just go," Makarov said, keeping his back turned to Laxus. However, Makarov kept his back to Laxus not because he was upset, but because he didn't want him to see the tears streaming down his face. Once Makarov heard the door close behind him, he couldn't hold back any longer. Sniffling loudly, Makarov buried his face into his arm, as he continued to weep. "You damn brat, why did you have to go and do something so stupid?" Several hours later, outskirts of Magnolia. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" Evergreen exclaimed, as she stared at Laxus in shock, the rest of the Reijinchu equally as surprised by the sudden news from their leader. "So he's excommunicating you just like that? That ain't fair, man." Bixlow added in, crossing his arms over his chest. "We all committed the same crime. Why are you the only one being tossed out?" "It's the old man's decision," Laxus said, as he slowly shook his head. "There's room for argument." "Well, if that's the case, I'll leave the guild with you," Evergreen blurted out without thinking, gesturing to Laxus' bags, which were on the ground next to him. "Just give me a few minutes to pack." "Yeah, if you ain't gonna be around," Bixlow said, as he nodded his head in agreement. "There really isn't any point in staying here." "Geez, don't be such idiots," Laxus said with a small smile, releasing a light chuckle. "Can't you all just say goodbye?" Why are you trying to shoulder all the blame?" Fried asked, as he stared down at the ground. "You shouldn't have to do that." "That's not what I'm doing," Laxus replied, picking up his bags and slinging them over his shoulder. "Unlike you three, I've got no real reason to stick around here, that's all there is to it. We'll go and speak to Master ourselves," Evergreen exclaimed, as she desperately tried to stop Laxus from leaving. "I'm sure Gray will speak up for you, hell Natsu might even too," Bixlow said, gritting his teeth in frustration. "They may act all tough, but when it comes down to it, take care of yourselves," Laxus said, as walked away, waving to the Reijinchu without turning back. "It's been fun. Don't fuck with us," Bixlow yelled, tightly balling his fists. "What about the Reijinchu?" "Stop," Fried said, as he held out his arm to stop Evergreen and Bixlow from following after Laxus. "He's made up his mind already, nothing we say will change it." Both Evergreen and Bixlow were confused when a small smile spread across Fried's face. "Besides, we'll see him again, I'm sure of it." 5 minutes later, Fantasia Parade. "Might as well see it one last time before I go," Laxus muttered to himself, with colorful fireworks exploding in the air above and hundreds of people cheering all around him. Because of his height, Laxus was able to stand near the back of the crowd and still see the parade clearly. The air was filled with the sounds of joy and music, as Laxus watched dozens of elaborately designed floats packed full of Fairy Tales members, all of them smiling brightly and waving to Magnolia's citizens. Even after everything they just went through and the injuries they sustained, they all can still smile like that and put on such a performance. Laxus tightly balled his fists, as an immense wave of guilt washed over him. "I was fooled to think they were weak." As Laxus continued to watch the parade intently, he started to notice numerous catcalls coming from the crowd. Turning his head towards the commotion, Laxus wasn't surprised when he saw that most of the girls that had participated in the Miss Fairy Tale contest were dancing on a float, all of them dressed in rather skimpy outfits. Further down the line of floats, Laxus spotted one being pulled by Elfman, who was in his Beast Soul takeover. The next float actually caught Laxus' eye. Standing in front of an elaborate and beautiful ice castle was Gray and Juvia, both of them dressed in elegant, formal attire. Gray had obviously crafted the impressive ice castle himself, but Juvia added to the performance by creating fountains of water all around the float. Directly after Gray and Juvia's float was the one that held Urza Scarlet, Fairy Tale's Titania. Equipped in her Heaven's Wheel armor, Urza put on a performance with her swords, seeming to performing a graceful dance with them. This display earned Urza just as much attention as the Miss Fairy Tale girls, many men in the crowd declaring their love for the scarlet-haired knight.
However, the performance that surprised Laxus the most was the one following right after Ursus.
Standing between 4 cauldrons, 2 of them spewing out bolts of lightning and the remaining 2 belching flames, was Natsu Dragneel.
The pink-haired dragon slayer looked as energetic and lively as ever, despite a slight limp in his step and his body being covered in copious amounts of gauze and bandages. Laxus couldn't help feeling a wave of shame wash over him, as he watched Natsu try his best to spell out fairy tale in the air using his lightning and flames, but needing to stop several times to rest and catch his breath. Several people in the crowd seemed to worry about Natsu's health, urging him to not push himself. But Natsu, being the stubborn person he was, nearly grinned through the exhaustion and tried to reassure everyone that he was fine. However, after a few wobbling steps, it appeared as if Natsu was about to collapse. Laxus was prepared to push through the crowd and help the dual dragon slayer, but he stopped when he spotted someone appear behind Natsu.
"Come on, Salamander, I'll help you finish your show,"
Gadjil said, as he wrapped one of Natsu's arms around his neck, helping support the pink-haired dragon slayer. The crowd's cheers only seemed to grow louder and more passionate, as they witnessed one guild member helping another.
"Now come on, we still have a ways to go. So don't disappoint these people, give them a show they'll never forget." "Gadjil, you didn't have to do this, I could have dash."
"I don't want to hear it, Salamander, I'm helping you whether you like it or not. You've helped me more than you can imagine these past few weeks, and you've always had my back ever since I joined this guild.
So it's time I start paying you back,"
Gadjil said, flashing Natsu a fong-filled smirk. "Gee, besides you said that us dragon slayers need to stick together."
"Heh, I guess you're right."
Natsu cheered, before he spewed out a stream of orange flames into the air, forming a large fairy tale symbol in the sky. "Let's put on a show for the ages, and thank Magnolia for always supporting our guild."
How was I ever supposed to beat someone like him?
Laxus thought, watching Natsu fire up the crowd with his performance, causing them to start chanting his name. The guy can barely walk on his own, yet he's out here putting on a damn show for all these people. I never stood a damn chance. I feel like such a fucking idiot. Natsu was right, I don't deserve to be a member of Fairy Tail after what I did. Adjusting the straps of his pack, Laxus turned his back to the parade and started to walk away. However, Laxus stopped his tracks when he heard several people within the crowd yell out.
"Look! It's the Master! The Master is here!
I guess I can stay just a little longer, I at least owe Gramps that much." Laxus thought, as he released a light sigh, turning back to face the parade. When Laxus spotted his grandfather standing atop the passing float, a soft smile spread across his face. The aging master of Fairy Tail was dressed in an odd cat-like outfit, laughing and dancing all around the float, which caused the people in the crowd to laugh along with him. As Laxus watched his grandpa practically make a fool of himself, he couldn't help but remember the first time he had participated in the Fantasia parade himself, and how Makarov had foregone his performance in the parade to watch his grandsons. Laxus' smile widened when he remembered the symbol he promised to make in the middle of his performance, a symbol that meant even if we can't see each other, I'm still watching you. With a soft chuckle, Laxus once again turned to leave, but some strange force seemed to be telling to take one last look back. Unable to resist the urge, Laxus turned back to see the parade, and what he saw caused his eyes to widen. Makarov had stopped his dance, standing atop the highest point on his float, proudly holding up the same symbol Laxus had displayed during his first Fantasia performance. Laxus watched in stunned silence as one by one, all the members of Fairy Tail held up the same symbol. Even Natsu, who Laxus thought would despise him, was displaying the symbol high into the air despite his exhaustion. At that moment, Natsu and Laxus looked eyes from across the crowd. Much like what happened after Natsu and Gadjil fought, an odd sense of respect seemed to have formed between Laxus and the pink-haired dragon slayer. There was still a lot of rocky ground between them, but at least they weren't enemies anymore. A toothy grin spread across Natsu's face as he nodded his head.
"Gramps, everyone,"
Laxus chalked out, with tears streaming down his cheeks. Holding back a sob, Laxus quickly wiped the tears from his eyes and turned back around. As Laxus began to walk away, he could hear Makarov's voice echoing in his mind. "Even if I can't see you, no matter how far away you may be, I will always be watching you, always watching over you."
"Yeah, I know,"
Laxus muttered to himself, a small smile on his face as he walked off into dark outskirts of Magnolia.
Later that night, hidden location outside Magnolia. Ah, ravens. Why are you always so beautiful? Ivan asked, as he petted the pitch-black bird. Oh? You think it's because people hate you? A sadistic smirk spread across Ivan's face, as he picked up one of the birds. There we go. The raven suddenly began to squawk and thrash in pain, before its body suddenly transformed into paper. True beauty lies in fleeting lives, wahahaha. Don't you agree, Gajeel-san? You never said anything about Laxus being a dragon slayer. Gajeel said, his blood-red eyes glaring at Ivan. Sure, the Iron Dragon already knew about Laxus being a dragon slayer because of Natsu, but he needed to press him for more information. You could have at least mentioned it. Wahahaha. Ivan suddenly burst out laughing as he turned to face Gajeel. He's what you'd call a fake. A pathetic little fake. A fake? Gajeel repeated, feigning his confusion. What do you mean? You see, when that kid was little, he was such a weakling. So, out of pity I had a lacrima implanted within his body. Ivan explained, as he shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. A lacrima that can allow the use of dragon slayer magic. Gajeel exclaimed, pretending to be shocked by this revelation. How is that possible? I know. They're exceptionally rare. Ivan said with a hearty chuckle. Now that Laxus has been excommunicated, he'll likely come to me, which is perfect. Quite recently I discovered that I can get a large sum of money for that lacrima. A sinister smile began spread across Ivan's face. An incredible amount of money. But if you extract the lacrima dash. Wahahaha. He was never worthy of that lacrima in the first place. I'll just be putting my kid back in his place. Ivan laughed boisterously, causing Gajeel to tightly ball his fists in frustration. It's the money that matters, the delicious money. I need enough cash to fund my war against Fairy Tail. Gajeel didn't even flinch when Ivan suddenly got in his face. You just stay where you are as my inside man, got it? And even if you get exposed as a spy, never reveal information about this place. I'm not that stupid. Gajeel said with a smirk, as he crossed his arms over his chest. But you're pretty fucking dumb, leaking all this valuable information. I need to get this back to Master fast. 1 hour later, Fairy Tail Guild Hall. The main portion of the Fantasia parade was now over, and the mages of Fairy Tail were partying. Drinks were flowing freely, as the entire guild rumbled with laughter and boisterous conversation. Mira Jane buzzed from table to table, serving drinks as fast she could, a bright smile on her face. Guild members clanged their overflowing mugs together to celebrate another successful harvest festival, despite the tough battle they had all fought against Laxus and his crew. As the party raged on, Gajeel watched on from the second floor, feeling as if his presence might sour the mood. The Iron Dragon Slayer knew that several people in the guild had already accepted him, but there was many who were still wary of him, and he still needed to prove himself to them. A small smile spread across Gajeel's face, as he watched Natsu wrap his arms around Lucy and Urza's waists, pulling his mates closer to him. Soon Gajeel's eyes drifted to the other side of the guild, focusing on a certain petite, blue-haired bookworm. A slight blush spread across Gajeel's face, as he ogled the revealing outfit Levi was wearing. You should go talk to her. Gajeel visibly jumped when someone suddenly spoke up from behind him. Whipping around, Gajeel was relieved to see that it was only Makarov. Levi is a nice girl, I'm sure she's not mad at you anymore. All you need to do is talk to her. I don't know what dash. I'm not a fool boy. Makarov said with a smile, as he walked up to Gajeel and hopped up onto the railing he was leaning against. I've seen the way you stare at her, you don't really try to hide it. It's obvious you want to spend time with her, but you keep holding yourself back. Why don't you make a move, my boy? I just can't yet. Gajeel said, tightly balling his fists. I can tell, she's still scared of me, after what I did to her. I can't blame her, I just have to be patient and give her time. I don't force my feelings onto her when she's not ready. You're smarter than you look. Makarov hummed, as he stroked his chin. I understand your reasons, Gajeel,
but try not to wait too long. A fine girl like her, it won't be long before another man snatches her up.
I'll kill anyone that tries.
Gajeel growled, his eyes narrowing dangerously.
Levi is my girl.
Ha ha ha. You and Natsu really can be like dragons sometimes.
Makarov laughed as he stripped out of his cat outfit.
Oh Gajeel, before I forget. Thank you for helping Natsu finish his performance. That boy's heart is in the right place, but he's just too damn stubborn sometimes.
No need to thank me, master.
Gajeel said, waving dismissively. Salamander has done so much for me ever since I joined Fairy Tail, supporting his dumb ass is the least I can do to pay him back.
Suddenly Gajeel's eyes widened, as he remembered what he had to give Makarov. Actually, master.
Reaching into his pocket, Gajeel handed Makarov a small slip of paper.
I've uncovered your son Ivan's current location.
Good work, Makarov said, as he stared down at the piece of paper.
And I'm sorry for giving you such a dangerous task.
Well, he hasn't worked out that I'm a double agent yet, so don't worry about it, Gajeel said, as he began to walk away.
Also, you should know that Ivan is after the lacrima in Lax's body.
Since I have his location now, I'll handle it, Makarov said, crumpling the piece of paper in his hand.
I won't let him have his way.
2 hours later. It was late into the night now and most of the guild had gone home to rest. The only people who remained were Max, Mira Jane, and few other helpers who were busy cleaning up the guild hall. Mira Jane was currently behind the bar, cleaning all the empty beer mugs. As Mira Jane ducked underneath the bar to put the empty mugs away, she heard someone take at the counter. Releasing a light sigh, Mira Jane closed her eyes and slung her rag over her shoulder. I'm sorry, but we've stopped serving drinks, Mira Jane said in a slightly annoyed tone, as she turned back to the newcomer.
If you're that desperate, you can go to one of the other bars in town. Ah, you can't even serve one drink to a friend?
A familiar voice asked in a teasing tone. Mira Jane immediately perked up, recognizing who was sitting at the bar behind her. Quickly spinning around, a bright smile spread across Mira Jane's face when she saw Natsu grinning back at her.
Come on, Mira, I'm dying for a fire whiskey. Something tells me you aren't really here for a drink,
Mira Jane said with a smirk, as she poured a shot glass full of whiskey, lighting the top of the alcohol aflame.
Here you go, Natsu, just the way you like it.
Cheers, Natsu said, raising his flaming shot into the air, before he downed it in a single gulp.
Ha! Damn, that really hit the spot. So Natsu,
Mira Jane said in a sultry tone, as she leaned over the counter, giving the pink-haired dragon slayer a generous view of her cleavage.
Why are you really here so late? Did you come here to see little Olmi? Actually, Natsu said, staring down into his shot glass, as his face turned slightly pink. I did. What?
Mira Jane stuttered out, as her face blushed beet red. The white-haired barmaid had just been teasing Natsu. She didn't really expect him to come to the guild so late at night just to visit her.
What did you want?
Well, you've been taking care of me the past 2 days, and despite that we never really had a chance to talk,
Natsu replied, locking eyes with the white-haired barmaid.
I felt it, Mira. I know you've reawakened your magic, and I just wanted to see how you were doing.
I am fine,
Mira Jane said, as she turned her head to avoid Natsu's gaze, nervously rubbing her arm. I didn't really have any other option. I needed to save Elfman.
Mira, are you still afraid of your magic?
Natsu asked, causing the white-haired barmaid to gasp in surprise.
Please, Mira, talk to me. I don't know,
Mira Jane replied, as she stared down at the floor. I know now that I can't always just sit idly by anymore. Sometimes I'll have to fight and use my powers to protect the things that I love, but... Natsu was caught off guard when he heard Mira Jane choke back a sob, as she began to hug herself. But sometimes, I feel like I'm about to lose control, like the demons inside me will take over, and I'm terrified of that. I don't want to end up hurting someone close to me.
By now tears were streaming down Mira Jane's cheeks. Mira!
Natsu breathed out, his heart aching as he watched Mira Jane continue to cry. Unable to stand it any longer, Natsu got out of his seat and hopped over the bar, hugging Mira Jane's head against his chest.
I was so scared, Natsu.
Mira Jane cried, as she turned her head and buried her face into Natsu's chest, letting his comforting warmth ease her heart.
When I fought against Freed, I could feel those evil desires starting to take hold. I ended up almost killing Freed. The only thing that stopped me was the thought of you and everyone else hating me for doing something so awful.
SHHHHH. Natsu said, stroking the top of Mira Jane's head in an attempt to comfort her. Nothing you could do would make me hate you, Mira Jane. Sure, I would have been shocked if you had accidentally killed someone, maybe even disappointed, but I would never hate you for it. Natsu held Mira Jane ever closer, pressing her body against his, as he rested head against hers. And you don't have to be scared of your own power, because you're one of the strongest people I know, and I'm sure that you'll be able to keep it under control.
Really?
Mira Jane asked, as she raised her head to look eyes with Natsu.
Do you really think I can do it?
Of course. Natsu said with a toothy grin, causing Mira Jane's heart to pound in her chest.
And hey, if you ever do somehow lose control, I'll bring you back to your senses, that's a promise. Natsu.
Mira Jane breathed out, as she felt all the feelings she had been holding back for years come rushing to the surface. The white-haired barmaid was done waiting, she had stood on the sidelines long enough. Now it was her time to show Natsu how strongly she felt about him. With a bright red blush dusting across her pale face, Mira Jane lunged forward and captured Natsu's lips in a passionate kiss. Mira Jane wrapped her arms around Natsu's neck, pulling him closer to deepen their kiss. Natsu was caught off guard for only the briefest of moments, before he immediately began to return Mira Jane's kiss, snaking in around her waist. The white-haired barmaid let out a soft moan when she felt Natsu's tongue tangle with hers, sending pleasurable tingles throughout her whole body. After a few more moments of their intense liplock, Mira Jane pulled away to catch her breath, immediately locking eyes with Natsu. Mira Jane panted slightly, as she pressed a hand against Natsu's chest.
That was everything I had hoped for and so much more. Mira. Natsu said in hushed tone, cupping the white-haired barmaid's cheek. I've wanted to do that for so long. You and me both.
Mira Jane said with a smile, as she gently grasped Natsu's hand, leaning into his touch. I've loved you for years, Natsu, you've done so much for me and my family, you were a pillar of support when I was at my lowest, I couldn't help falling for you. But I always had trouble expressing my feelings to you, especially when I knew that other girls shared the same feelings for you.
That's why you came up with this whole Dragon King harem thing?
Natsu asked with a knowing smirk, causing Mira Jane's eyes to widen slightly. Don't worry, Luce told me about it, and I really have to thank you, Mira. I never understood my own feelings for so long, why I was so strongly attracted to certain women in my life. But thanks to you, Lucy, and Urza, I know why now, and I want to make you girls, and all my other mates happy. I want us all to be a family together.
Oh Natsu, I love you so much.
Mira Jane said, as she felt tears once again welling up in her eyes.
So please, take me, make me one of your mates.
I want to join Lucy and Urza, I want to be a part of your family.
How could I say no?
Natsu said with a smile, pulling Mira Jane close once again and leaning in for kiss.
Wait, Natsu.
Mira Jane hissed, as she put up her hand to block Natsu.
Shouldn't we go somewhere more private?
The white-haired barmaid was now acutely aware that they were still in the guild hall, and that there were still people in the building with them.
What if someone sees us? That just makes it all the more exciting.
Natsu whispered hotly into Mira Jane's ear, sending chills down her spine. The white-haired barmaid squeaked in surprise when Natsu suddenly gave her ass a quick squeeze.
See, reacting like that is gonna get us caught. You need to stay calm, Mira. That's kinda hard to do when you're making me feel so good.
Mira Jane said with a huff, as her face turned an even darker shade of red.
My body gets so hot every time you touch me. Then let's see how well you can keep your composure. Natsu said with a mischievous smirk, stealthily sneaking his head up Mira Jane's thigh, up into her dress.
The white-haired barmaid was about to question Natsu, but she was stopped when a sudden, rather loud, moan escaped mouth. Instantly, Mira Jane slapped a hand over her mouth, her face burning near neon red as she watched a couple people look towards her. Laughing nervously, Mary Jane waved to the people who were still cleaning, most them shrugging and returning to their work.
Natsu!
What the hell? Mary Jane suddenly bit her bottom lip to suppress another moan, as a jolt of pleasure rocked her body. Looking down, Mary Jane saw that one of Natsu's hands had wormed its way into her panties, his hot fingers teasing her womanhood.
Act natural, Natsu ordered, acting as if nothing was going on. Just go back to cleaning up the bar.
Mary Jane hesitated for a moment, but she eventually did as she was told, picking up an empty beer mug and drying it off. The white-haired barmaid's entire face was flushed bright red, her blush spreading down to her chest. While Mary Jane was beyond embarrassed at what she was doing, she couldn't deny how exciting it was. Her heart was frantically pounding in her chest, her breathing ragged and excited, and the thought of being caught only seemed to heighten the pleasure she was feeling. When Mary Jane felt two of Natsu's fingers slip into her folds, she had to suddenly bite her bottom lip to suppress a squeal of pleasure. In and out Natsu slowly moved his fingers, nearly causing Mary Jane to drop the mug she was trying to dry. The white-haired barmaid let out a low moan of pleasure when she felt Natsu's thumb begin to stimulate her clitoris. By now Mary Jane's breathing was short and ragged, her breast swelling with every breath.
Just keep acting calm and composed. I'm gonna make you really feel good now, Natsu whispered, silently ducking down beneath the bar.
Mary Jane tried to keep a natural smile on her face as she continued to clean up the bar. However, the white-haired barmaid's eyes widened slightly when she felt something, or rather someone, lift up her dress and hide underneath. Mary Jane shuddered when she felt Natsu's hot breath against her bare thighs. Now that Natsu was out of sight within Mary Jane's dress, a devious smirk spread across his face when he saw her panties.
Black lace?
Oh Mira, you act so innocent sometimes, but you're actually such a naughty girl, and you're so wet already.
You really are ready for this, I just have to warm you up a bit more. Before Natsu got to the main event, he decided to tease Mary Jane just a bit more.
Using a minuscule amount of his lightning magic, Natsu slowly racked his fingertips along Mary Jane's legs and ass. A satisfied smile spread across Natsu's face when he heard Mary Jane shudder in pleasure, watching as goosebumps formed wherever he touched. Giving Mary Jane's incredibly soft behind one more squeeze, Natsu hooked his fingers into her panties and slid them down her pale legs. The pink-haired dragon slayer licked his lips when he saw Mary Jane's dripping womanhood before him.
What the hell is he doing now?
Mary Jane thought, as she felt her panties be pulled down her legs, dropping down around her ankles.
This is so embarrassing, thank God I have this Dre AWW.
Mary Jane's thoughts were cut short when an incredible wave of pleasure rocked her body, causing her to let out a throaty moan. Instantly Mary Jane slapped a hand over her mouth, her entire face neon red when she saw that once again all remaining eyes in the guild were on her. The white-haired barmaid's entire body was shaking in pleasure, making her hold onto the bar for support. She had pretty good idea what Natsu was doing now, feeling his burning tongue probe her wet folds. The white-haired barmaid had to fight every urge to scream out in ecstasy, feeling wave after wave of pleasure course through her body. When Mary Jane felt Natsu reach up and twist her sensitive nub, she had to bite her bottom lip hard and slam her fist onto the bar to fight back a deep moan.
You okay, Mira?
The white-haired barmaid's eyes shot wide open in horror when she saw that Max was standing right in front of her. Max had a confused look on his face, as he leaned against the broom he was using to sweep.
"'Cause you've been making some weird sounds and your face is all red. You sure you aren't feeling sick or anything?" No. I'm completely fine.
Mary Jane stuttered out through clenched teeth, as she forced a smile onto her face, feeling Natsu's tongue plunge deeper inside her. The white-haired barmaid had to fight every urge to scream out in pleasure, as she felt an intense orgasm rock her entire body, causing her grip on the counter to tighten considerably, causing some of the wood to splinter.
There's nothing to worry about.
Oh, okay, Max said in a still confused tone, rubbing the back of his head. Well, we're all done cleaning here, so we're gonna head home. Make sure to lock the place up before you go, and get some rest, it looks like you're burning up.
Will do, Max,
Mary Jane said, as she watched Max walk away, waving to him.
See you tomorrow.
As soon Max closed the doors behind him, finally leaving Mary Jane and Natsu alone in the guild hall, the pink-haired dragon slayer reappeared next to Mirajane with a mischievous smile on his face. That sure was exciting, we almost got caught at the end. Natsu said with a smirk, licking Myra's remaining juices from his lips. You taste great, by the way. The white-haired barmaid glared fiercely at Natsu for a few moments, before she pounced forward and captured his lips in a fiery kiss, spinning them around so that Natsu's back was against the bar. That was so hot. Mirajane breathed out between kisses, before she began to nibble on Natsu's ear. You've got me so worked up right now, it's not fair that I'm only one being pleasured. Reaching down, Mirajane gripped Natsu's erect manhood and began to massage it through his pants. Get these pants off now, I want to see the fierce dragon that you're packing. Yes, ma'am. Natsu exclaimed, practically tearing his pants off and yanking down his boxers. Mirajane's jaw dropped when she saw the impressive rod of flesh standing fully erect mere inches away. I know Lucy and Urza said that Natsu was well endowed, but still, I wasn't expecting this. Mirajane thought, as she unconsciously licked her lips, in awe of Natsu's splendid manhood. Reaching down, Mirajane gently took Natsu's shaft in her hand. Instantly she gasped softly, feeling how hot it was and the pleasurable tingles it was sending down her arm. Taking a calming breath, Mirajane slowly began to stroke Natsu's erect shaft. I've never done anything like before, I wonder if I'm doing things right. Mirajane quickly got her answer when she heard a throaty moan escape Natsu's lips. Damn Mira, your hands are so soft. Natsu groaned, his hands tightly gripping the bar, as he fought back his own orgasm. They're like magic or something. I could say the same about you. Mirajane teased, as a playful smirk spread across her face. Now, I have no experience when it comes to things like this, I only know what I've read and things other people have told me, so you'll just have to bear with me. Getting down onto her knees, Mirajane winked at Natsu. Don't worry, I'll get better with lots of practice. Mira. Natsu said, knowing what Mirajane was about to do. You don't have to. Halfway thought his sentence, Natsu's voice spiked as he let out a lengthy moan. Immense pleasure spread throughout Natsu's body, feeling Mirajane's hot and wet mouth wrap around his manhood. Slowly, Mirajane began to bob her head up and down, somewhat awkwardly wrapping her tongue around his shaft. Fuck Mira. Natsu grunted, his voice now a lustful growl as he ran his hands through her snow-white hair, urging her to take his cock further into her mouth. Whatever Mirajane lacked in experience, she definitely made up for in enthusiasm. She began to slowly take Natsu's manhood deeper, getting a little more than halfway down his rod. Hands, Mira, use your hands too. Following Natsu's request, Mirajane used one of her free hands and began to stroke the portion of shaft she couldn't reach with her mouth. Natsu threw his head back and let out a lengthy moan, feeling his orgasm rapidly approaching. Shit Mira, I'm so close. Hearing this only seemed to spur Mirajane on, as she immediately began to speed up her sucking, her tongue rapidly swirling around Natsu's cock. Mira! Growling in pleasure, Natsu grabbed a hold of Mirajane's head to hold in her place, as felt an intense orgasm rock his body. The pink-haired dragon slayer felt his entire body shake, as he shot his seed down Mirajane's throat. When Natsu felt his orgasm subside, he slowly pulled out of Mirajane's mouth. Panting slightly, with sweat forming on his brow, Natsu leaned against the bar. Holy shit, that was fantastic, Mira. Everything I've read says that this stuff tastes gross. Mirajane said, as she swallowed the last of Natsu's seed, sensually licking her lips. But I kinda like it, I'll have to try it against soon. But right now. Natsu watched in awe, as Mirajane slowly slid off her pink dress and unclipped her lacy black bra, leaving her completely naked. Right now is when the real fun begins. Fuck. Natsu breathed out, ogling Mirajane's beautiful body with wide eyes. Her breasts were extremely large, like most of the women in fairy tale, and showed no signs of sagging whatsoever. With every breath Mirajane took, her bosom would expand out, making her already impressive bust appear even larger. Every movement Mirajane made would cause her glorious mounds of flesh to jiggle and bounce ever so slightly. Natsu threw off his vest and embraced Mirajane, pressing their naked bodies together. You're so beautiful, Mira. You're not too bad yourself. Mira Jane said, as she bit her bottom lip, slowly tracing the muscles on Natsu's chest, being careful of the bandages that still covered his body. I can't wait any longer, Natsu. I love you so much, so please, make me one of your mates. Of course, Mira, I love you too. Natsu said, giving Mira Jane a brief, yet loving, kiss on the lips. Now put your hands on the bar and stick your ass out. Okay. Mira Jane said, as brushed past Natsu and placed her hands against the bar, sticking her round butt out. Like this? Perfect. Natsu growled in a lustful tone, running his palm along Mira Jane's soft ass. I'm gonna put it in now, Mira, let me know if it hurts. Lining himself up with Mira Jane's dripping womanhood, Natsu slowly began to push his shaft inside her. Both mages hissed, as Natsu began to inch his way deeper inside Mira Jane. The white-haired barmaid couldn't describe the sensation she was feeling. It was an odd mixture of a dull ache and incredible pleasure, as a wave of hot, tingling ecstasy washed over her. After a few moments, Natsu was fully inside Mira Jane, and he stopped to give her body a few moments to adjust to his size. However, the dull ache Mira Jane was feeling rapidly faded away, leaving her with a feeling of immense pleasure and completeness she had never felt before. You can start moving now, Natsu. Mira Jane breathed out, as she rolled her hips, causing both mages to moan in pleasure. And don't worry about being too gentle, I'm a tough girl. Oh, you're gonna regret saying that. Natsu whispered into Mira Jane's ear with a devious smirk on his face. Pulling almost entirely out of Mira Jane's womanhood, Natsu roughly slammed back into her, causing a loud slapping sound to echo throughout the guild hall. Mira Jane released a series of lengthy moans, as Natsu began to rapidly pound into her, the sounds of their intense lovemaking reverberating off the walls. Grabbing a handful of Mira Jane's snow-white hair, Natsu pulled her head back, causing her to scream out in a mixture of pain and pleasure. Fuck Natsu. This amazing. Mira Jane exclaimed in pleasure, as she began to meet Natsu's thrusts with her own. Fuck me harder. Faster. Not one to disappoint, Natsu increased the speed and power behind his thrusts, pushing even deeper inside Mira Jane. The sound of flesh slapping against flesh, and the moans of both mages, were the only sounds within the empty guild hall. Releasing his grip on Mira Jane's hair, Natsu reached forward and grabbed a hold of Mira Jane's incredibly soft breasts. The pink-haired dragon slayer hugged Mira Jane against his chest, as he began to mold and knead her impressive tits. The white-haired barmaid screamed out in ecstasy when Natsu pinched her erect nipples. Turning her head, Mira Jane captured Natsu's lips in a lust-filled kiss, her body shaking as she experienced her second orgasm. Feeling Mira Jane's orgasm only spurred Natsu on, as she continued to relentlessly pound into her. Up on the bar, now. Natsu ordered, suddenly pulling out of Mira Jane, much to her disappointment. But Mira Jane did as she was told, sitting on top of the counter and spreading her legs. Moving between Mira Jane's thighs, Natsu once again lined himself up with her womanhood and thrust inside. The white-haired barmaid wrapped her arms around Natsu's neck and buried her face into the crook of his neck, as he began to rapidly piston into her. Natsu embraced Mira Jane tightly, squashing her breasts against his chest as he continued to make love to her. After a few more minutes of intense thrusting, Natsu could feel his own orgasm rapidly approaching. Mira, I'm really close. I want it inside me. Mira Jane said with a smile, as she wrapped her legs around Natsu's waist, locking him in place. I want you to give me everything you've got, make me one your mates. Mira. Natsu breathed out, before he resumed thrusting into her womanhood with renewed vigor. After only a few more thrusts, Natsu felt his orgasm arrive. Mira. Now is your chance. She has all but begged you. Take her as your mate now. As Natsu began to shot his seed inside Mira Jane, he sank his fangs into her neck and began to pump his magic into her body. Mira Jane screamed out Natsu's name in euphoria, as an incredible mix of pain and pleasure sent her over the edge into another orgasm. Both mages tightly embraced each other as they experienced their orgasmic high, both their bodies twitching slightly. Once the incredible sensations had subsided, Natsu slowly pulled out of Mira Jane, some of their mixed love juices dripping onto the bar's floor. Natsu, that was simply amazing. Mira Jane panted out, as she laid down on the bar's counter.
It was everything I could have hoped for.
It was fantastic for me too, Natsu said with a grin, grasping Mira Jane's hand and placing a kiss on her forehead.
Welcome to the family, Mira. Oh Natsu, I'm so happy right now, you have no idea.
Mira Jane said, as a faint blush spread across her face. I've dreamed of being your lover for years, now I've finally become one with you, and I get to share you with some of my best friends, to truly be like a family and care for each other. I'm happy too, Mira, I love all you girls, I'll do anything to make sure you're all always smiling,
Natsu said, laying down on the bar next to Mira Jane.
That's a promise. And you never break your promises, Mira Jane said with a light chuckle, as she lazily ran her hand across Natsu's chest. As Mira Jane laid next to Natsu, her eyes eventually began to drift down his body, landing on his semi-erect manhood.
Seeing the impressive pillar of flesh reignited Mira Jane's lust.
You know, the night is still young and I could go for a couple more rounds, if you're up to it of course.
Is that a challenge, Mira Jane Strauss? Because I assure you, that you will lose. Natsu teased with a mischievous smirk on his face. Just ask Luz and Urza, neither of them could keep up with me. We'll just have to see about that,
Mira Jane said with a smirk of her own, as she hopped off the bar and gathered her clothes.
Now come on, let's head back to your place and keep this party going. Sounds like a plan to me, Natsu said with a grin, following Mira Jane out of the guild, giving her ass a quick spank on the way out.
Neither of them noticing the few streaks of pink hair that had started to infiltrate the back of Mira Jane's head.
The following morning, Natsu's house. Oi salamander, you up? Gajeel asked, as he knocked on Natsu's front door.
I left my wallet over here when I was helping Mira Jane take care of you.
However, after several moments Gajeel received no reply and he heard no movement without the house. Salamander must be out doing some early morning training or something. Twisting the doorknob, Gajeel was surprised when the door opened.
That idiot left his front door open, well I guess I'll just run in real quick and grab it. Walking into Natsu's home, Gajeel was immediately hit by a strange, musky scent that seemed to fill the entire house.
Jesus, what the fuck is that smell? It's so fucking intense, but it's weird.
It almost smells familiar. Making his way through the now clean house, thanks to Mira Jane, Gajeel eventually made it to Natsu's room. Gajeel cracked the door open and peeked inside, and instantly regretted that decision. Curled up together on the hammock was Natsu and Mira Jane, a blanket loosely covering their naked bodies. The Iron Dragon Slayer stared at this scene in disgust for several moments, before he closed the door. Holy shit, I seriously didn't need to see that, I think I may be scared for life now. Without a second thought Gajeel walked out of Natsu's house, completely forgetting about his missing wallet. Now I know why I recognize that smell, it's the same one that always clings to Bunny Girl, and that night, fuck me, I think I'm gonna be sick.
Chapter 39, Love and Lucky.
1 week after the Harvest Festival, Fairy Tale Guild Hall. It's been an entire week since the Harvest Festival ended, and daily life in Magnolia has finally begun to settle back into its normal routine. However, there was one event that had affected the Fairy Tale Guild in varying ways, and that event was Laxus' expulsion from the guild.
Most of the guild members didn't know how to take the news.
Many mages in the guild were glad to see Laxus gone, finally getting fed up with him after the stunt he had pulled during the Harvest Festival. Others felt that Makarov may have gone too far, and that another form of punishment could have been decided. But what surprised a majority of the guild's members the most was Natsu's behavior. Many people in the guild were expecting Natsu to be overjoyed at the news of Laxus' banishment, but instead he appeared to be quite indifferent over the matter, neither happy or upset. The dual dragon slayer had spent much of the past week sitting quietly in the guild hall, seeming to be in deep thought most of the time. He would still go on missions and speak when spoken to, but other than that he wasn't his usual loud, obnoxious self. Something definitely seemed off about him.
Guys, I'm starting to worry about Natsu,
Lucy said to Mira Jane and Urza, all three of them discreetly watching their mate from a nearby table. He's been like this ever since we found out that Laxus was banished from the guild. It's like he's here, but not at the same time. The busty blonde mage released a heavy sigh, as she stared longingly at her lover.
I thought that Natsu hated Laxus, so why does he seem so depressed? I wouldn't say that Natsu hated Laxus,
Urza said, as she clasped her hands on top of the table, her normally warm brown eyes now full of frustration. Sure, they fought, argued, and were constantly at each other's throats, and even if Natsu said it, he never truly hated Laxus. It takes a lot for Natsu to actually hate someone.
You know how Natsu feels about his nakama.
Mira Jane added, twirling a streak of pink hair around her finger, feeling a slight ache emanating from her mate Mark.
He's probably just really confused right now.
Natsu and Laxus would constantly fight, and he understands that Laxus needed to be punished for his actions, but despite everything that he's done, Natsu probably still considered Laxus to be one of his nakama. So seeing him banished like that, it must be hard for him to wrap his feelings around this whole situation.
I didn't consider that,
Lucy muttered, as she looked at Natsu in a new light. I don't know how Natsu does it, being able to forgive his enemies like that.
Well, Natsu has a big heart,
Urza said with a soft smile, resting her head on her palm. That's one of his best features.
He's been like that ever since he joined that guild,
Mira Jane said, as she chuckled lightly. I remember he'd always start fights with the other guild members, then once it was over they'd be like best friends. I guess Natsu just has a natural ability to make friends, Lucy said with a smile, remembering the day she had first met the pink-haired dragon slayer. When I met Natsu all those years ago, the blonde celestial spirit mage was cut off when a loud bang echoed out from a nearby table. Quickly turning around, Lucy, Urza, and Mira Jane were surprised to see that Natsu had suddenly stood up from his seat, apparently slamming his hands on the table in the process. Without saying a word, Natsu slowly made his way over to the bar, where Makarov was currently sitting. A frown was plastered on the dual dragon slayer's face, and his fists were tightly balled. On the other hand, Fairy Tail's guild master was sitting cross-legged on the bar's counter, his brows furrowed as he appeared to be contemplating something.
Guys, should we stop Natsu? He looks like he might start something with Master.
Hold on a sec, Lucy, Urza said, as she held out her hand, turning around in her seat to watch what was about to unfold. Let's give Natsu the benefit of the doubt first, but if he does start something we'll have to stop him. It's going to take all of us to calm him down, so be ready to move on my signal.
We're right behind you, Urza,
Mira Jane said with a smile, giving the scarlet-haired knight a thumbs up. We'll make sure nothing happens to Natsu.
Natsu, I can't really imagine what you're feeling right now,
Lucy thought, as she stared at her pink-haired lover with a hint of worry in her eyes, clasping her hands over her heart.
But please don't do anything reckless.
By now Natsu had reached the bar, stopping directly in front of Makarov. Despite sitting on top of the bar, Natsu stood almost a head taller than Makarov, almost looming over the elderly guild master. For several tense moments neither Natsu nor Makarov said anything, both of them simply staring at each other. Already knowing what Natsu wanted to discuss, Makarov released a heavy sigh and took a long swig of the beer that was on the bar next to him.
Exhaling loudly, Makarov set his beer mug back down. Is something wrong, Natsu? Makarov asked, locking eyes with the dual dragon slayer once again.
Because if you have something to say, it's best to just spit it out. I'm not mad at you, Ji-chan. I'm not mad that you expelled Laxus from the guild, and I understand how hard of a decision that must have been for you.
That it was something you didn't really want to do,
Natsu said, before he paused momentarily to collect himself. Tired of their little stare down, Natsu hopped up and sat down on the bar next to Makarov.
Laxus is one of the biggest assholes I've ever met.
This sudden jab caused Makarov to chuckle underneath his breath. Sensing that the tension had gone down slightly, Natsu decided to keep going. He hurt my nakama, insulted them constantly too, he endangered this entire town with his stupid game and desire for power, but I endured all his bullshit, I took all his beatings, I took all the mocking and berating, I took it all and used it as motivation to get stronger and finally prove to him that he was wrong, that he was wrong about our guild being weak, that he wrong about my nakama, that he wrong about me. Natsu was hanging his head now, staring down at the floor below. You know, I've never really told this to anyone before, but I kinda looked up to Laxus. Makarov's eyes widened slightly when Natsu said this. He was always so much stronger than I was, I wanted to be strong like him so that I could protect the things I love. Raising his back up, Natsu let out a bitter chuckle. You know all those old stories about heroes. In all those stories the hero always had a rival. The rival was always cocky and arrogant, and was way stronger than the hero, but that gap in power never discouraged the hero. They'd train and train, go on adventures, learn many new things, and make a ton of friends along the way. Then at the end of the story, the hero would have their final showdown against their rival, and then after an emotional and climatic battle, the hero would win and prove his rival wrong, and then an unshakable respect would form between the hero and his rival, and they would end up becoming friends.
Natsu. Makarov breathed out, staring at the dual dragon slayer in shock. I had no idea.
I was really hoping that's what would happen with Laxus and I, that after our fight, and after I beat him, we could finally bury the hatchet. Natsu continued, as he turned his head to look at Makarov. I never hated Laxus. He's still got an ass-kicking or two waiting for him after all the things he did to the people I care about, but I never once hated him, because he was one of my nakama, and I knew that if I busted my ass off, and got stronger, then maybe I could knock some sense into him one day. You weren't wrong for punishing Laxus, Ji-chan, that was something that needed to happen.
But, was there really no other way? Was banishing Laxus the only option?
Yes, my boy, it was the only punishment fitting for the crimes he committed. Makarov replied solemnly, the words still leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. He endangered all of you in this entire town. Laxus may be my grandson, but I think of all of you as my children as well. And I will not tolerate someone who puts my children's lives at risk. Makarov watched as Natsu's eyes narrowed, mulling over what he had just been told. I understand now what Laxus meant to you, but please my boy, please understand that this was something that needed to happen. Natsu stared at Makarov in silence for several moments, before nodding his head and hopping off the bar.
Alright, I understand Ji-chan, I won't try to change your mind. Natsu said, speaking with his back turned to Makarov.
But one last thing before I go, I noticed that you've been packing your things lately, almost as if you're going to quit being our guild's master. Makarov stiffened slightly, knowing that he had been caught red-handed. Don't try and shoulder all the blame for Laxus' actions. He's a grown man and has realized that he made a huge mistake. If he found out you quit your job because of him, that would be an even worse punishment than being expelled from the guild. Natsu's words left Makarov stunned. He hadn't even considered his grandson's own feelings. With those final words, Natsu made his way over towards the table where his mates were sitting.
Luce, let's go, I'll walk you home.
You need to start packing, because we've got a mission tomorrow.
Huh? What mission?
Lucy asked in a confused tone, as she watched Natsu place a job flyer on the table. What's this? Picking up the flyer, Lucy began to quickly skim through what it said. She was pleasantly surprised to see that it was a simple escort job, and not some dangerous extermination mission. However, Lucy's eyes lit up when she saw the mission's reward.
And 9 million jewels. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, it's a request from some super rich businessman who's having an important meeting with one of his clients.
Apparently he's really paranoid and hires a new group of bodyguards every few weeks.
Natsu explained, pointing towards the job's description on the middle of the flyer. This guy also asked for Urza and I personally when he submitted the request. He also said we're allowed to bring one additional team member if we want. Sitting down at the table next to Lucy, the dual dragon slayer pressed his hip against hers, unconsciously leaning closer to her.
What about Gray?
Lucy asked, as she subtly nodded her head towards the ice mage, who was sitting several tables over.
He might get jealous if we leave without him. Yeah, and what about me?
Mira Jane teased with a smirk, leaning forward towards Natsu, her massive breasts squashing against the table.
I'm gonna be so lonely without you here.
Trust me, Mira, if we could take you with us, you'd definitely be going too. And to answer your question, Luce, screw the ice princess. After all the shit he's done to make Juvia sad, he can miss a mission or two for. Natsu replied with an irritated huff, before he crossed his arms over his chest. Besides, even if I wanted to bring more people, we can't. I told you guy who submitted the request is paranoid as hell, and he doesn't like traveling with large groups of people. He made it very clear that there is not to be more than 3 people on this mission.
Sorry Mira, but my hands are tied here. It's fine, Natsu.
Mira Jane said with a bright smile, resting her head on her palm.
I was just messing around anyways.
I know I reawakened my powers recently, but I'm not really ready to start going on jobs just yet.
I'm perfectly happy bartending right now. Alright,
Natsu said with a soft smile, as he placed his hand on top of Mira Jane's.
whenever you're ready to start going on missions again, just let me know. We'll kick some serious ass together. Of course we will.
Mira Jane said, giving her mate's hand a loving squeeze.
Natsu, I don't know what to say.
Lucy said, as she held the request flyer tightly in her hands, looking as if she was about to start crying.
You didn't have to do this for me.
Of course I did, Luce.
Natsu said with a grin, wrapping his arm around Lucy's shoulder and pulling her close.
We're mates now, which means I'll always be looking out for you. The dual dragon slayer let out a light chuckle, and rubbed the back of his head. Besides, I know you really need the money, especially since, you didn't win the Miss Fairy Tale pageant.
Ugh, did you really have to remind me?
Lucy asked, as she hung her head in shame. I could have won if that bitch Evergreen didn't interrupt me. You still did really great, Lucy. Coming in second place is amazing on your first try. Urza reassured her fellow mate, trying to help the blonde celestial spirit mage regain her confidence.
You'll definitely win next year.
I don't want to hear that from the girl who won first place, Lucy said in a mildly irritated tone, which caused Urza's face to burn red in embarrassment. Burying her head into her arms, Lucy released a light sigh. I was so psyched for that contest too. Cheer up, Luce. After we complete this job you won't have to worry about money for a while. If we split it 3 ways, that's 3 million jewels each, which will cover your rent and other expenses for a few months and still leave you with some extra spending money. Natsu said with a bright, toothy smile, patting Lucy on the back. Now come on, you need to pack and rest up before we leave tomorrow.
Yeah, you're right,
Lucy said, as she sat back up, Natsu's words lifting her spirits back up. Maybe if we do a good job on this mission, he'll pay us a little extra.
That's the spirit.
Natsu cheered, jumping up out of his seat and holding his hand out for Lucy.
Let's do this.
Urza, you should probably start getting ready too.
Don't worry about me, I'll be ready on time,
Urza said with a small smile, as she teasingly shooed both mages away.
Now you two hurry up and get out of here.
Alright, let's go,
Lucy exclaimed with a grin, grabbing Natsu's hand and practically jumping out her seat.
However, the blonde celestial spirit mage stopped in her tracks when she noticed a hooded figure walk across the other side of the guild and out the front door.
Ha! Again.
What's up, Luce?
Natsu asked, as he quirked an eyebrow in intrigue. Why'd you stop all of a sudden? It's probably just my imagination, but lately I feel like I'm being watched,
Lucy said, stroking her chin as she stared at the guild's entrance.
Okay, I'm definitely walking you home then, Natsu growled, as he instantly switched into a protective state.
If some creep is perving on you, I'll beat the ever-living shit of them.
Natsu, you don't have to dash.
Of course I do, Luce, Natsu said, staring at Lucy with eyes so intense, they made her gasp in surprise. You said that if it involves our guild mates, you can handle it, but this isn't one of our nakama. I won't stand for some bastard stalker making you feel uncomfortable and unsafe. So please, until we catch this person, just let me walk you home.
It's the least I can do. ****, you really don't leave any room to argue, do you?
Lucy said with a small smile, as she crossed her arms underneath her impressive bust.
Sure, you can walk me home until this is dealt with. But what about Mira and Urza?
As much as I would love to, I'm only one guy,
Natsu said, rubbing the back of his neck.
Besides, Urza lives in Fairy Hills, which is right behind the guild, and Mira has Elfman to keep her company.
And Elfman does such a good job too,
Mira Jane said, as she clapped her hands together. He keeps all the catcallers away, they can be such a pain sometimes.
Okay, let's get going then,
Lucy said, grabbing a hold of Natsu's hand.
I don't want to get home too late. Awesome, I'll see you two tomorrow,
Natsu exclaimed, as he waved goodbye to Urza and Mirajane.
Oh.
And if either of you see Juvia, tell her congratulations for getting third place in the pageant.
With those last words, Natsu and Lucy exited the guild hall.
That boy, so full of energy. Mirajane said, releasing a wistful sigh as she rubbed her mate Mark. I'm so glad that I finally got a chance to express my feelings to him.
You and me both.
Urza said, which caused both girls to start laughing.
Hey Nachan.
Elfman suddenly called out, running up to the table where Urza and Mirajane were sitting.
You ready to head home yet?
Yeah, just give me a few minutes to clean up some things behind the bar. Mirajane replied, as she got up out of her seat, brushing some stray hair out of her eyes.
You know Nachan, I've been meaning to ask.
Elfman said, gesturing towards the numerous streaks of pink in Mirajane's normally pure white hair.
What's up with your hair? Even Urza and Lucy have the same style as you.
Both Urza and Mirajane froze in place when they heard Elfman say this. Sure, all of them loved Natsu with all their hearts, but they weren't quite ready to reveal their unorthodox relationship to the rest of the guild. Besides, Mirajane knew that Elfman likely wouldn't take the news very well, and would probably go after Natsu.
Nachan? You okay? I am fine.
Mirajane quickly replied with a nervous smile, as she looked at Urza for any sort of help. However, the scarlet-haired knight subtly shook her head, not knowing what to say.
About our hair,
Mirajane scanned around the guild, trying to see anything that could help her think of an excuse. Then she spotted it, an issue of the Weekly Sorcerer that had been left on one of the tables.
It's the latest fashion trend.
Elfman quirked an eyebrow in confusion at his sister's sudden outburst.
Yeah, I read about in the Weekly Sorcerer a few days ago. Dyeing your hair like this is all the rage right now.
I showed the article to Lucy and Urza, and they decided to try it with me. Mirajane laughed nervously and stared at her brother, praying that he would buy her awful excuse.
Oh, well I guess that makes sense. Elfman said, scratching his head, still slightly perplexed by his sister's odd behavior.
Well, when you're ready to go, I'll be by the front door. Waving to both Urza and his sister, Elfman walked away from the table.
Man, girls are weird. That was too close.
Mirajane muttered, as she breathed a sigh of relief. I love you, Elfman, but thank God you're such an idiot sometimes.
10 minutes later, Strawberry Street. I can't wait for tomorrow's job.
Lucy cheered with a bright smile, balancing along the edge of the canal as she walked back towards her apartment.
I wonder what I'll wear. It'll have to be something nicer if we're escorting a rich businessman.
You'll look great in anything you wear, Luce. Natsu said, as he walked beside his first mate, staying alert for anything suspicious.
All I know is that if it were up to me, we wouldn't even be going on this mission tomorrow.
I'd much rather spend all day in bed with you, Urza, and Mira.
And Natsu.
Lucy exclaimed, her face burning near neon red in embarrassment. Why, you're too much sometimes. I don't even know if I'm ready for something like that yet.
Huh?
What's got you so worked up? Natsu asked, genuinely confused as to why Lucy was freaking out. After going several possibilities in his head, Natsu finally caught on to what got his mate so upset.
Oh, geez, Luce, I didn't mean it like that.
I meant the four of us just taking a day off to relax and hang out.
Oh, sorry for jumping to conclusions.
Lucy muttered, turning her head away to avoid Natsu's gaze.
So, you really weren't talking about, No.
I know you wouldn't feel comfortable doing something like that, especially this early into our relationship.
Natsu said, as his cheeks tinted pink and he scratched his cheek.
But, maybe sometime in the future, if you're all okay with it, something like that might be nice.
Natsu, you perv.
Lucy teased, playfully smacking her lover on the arm.
I didn't know you had a side like this. Can you blame me?
Natsu defended himself, as he gestured to the blonde celestial spirit mage. I'm surrounded by gorgeous women like you all day, I can't help it if I get horny sometimes.
Oh, okay, I think I understand.
Lucy muttered, clutching a hand over her pounding heart, her face burning red once again. I know he says stuff like this all the time, but every time Natsu compliments me, my heart starts racing like crazy and I feel so happy.
Wait.
Hold up, Luz. Natsu said suddenly, as he held out his arm to stop the blonde celestial spirit mage, snapping Lucy out of her thoughts. Cocking his head up, Natsu sniffed the air several times.
Someone has been tailing us, they're in the alley behind us.
Really? Lucy said, using her recently enhanced senses to smell the air as well.
Now that you mention it, that scent has been following us almost since we left the guild.
Lucy's eyes narrowed slightly when she realized something about the scent felt strange.
This scent, it's oddly familiar. Alright, that's enough sneaking around.
Natsu exclaimed, as he turned towards the alley where the scent was coming from.
Whoever the hell you are, get out here now before I come back there and kick your ass.
After several moments of receiving no reply, Natsu started to grow impatient.
Growling in frustration, Natsu coated his hands in flames and took several steps towards the alley. I'm not joking, you bastard.
You're making my mate feel uncomfortable, so don't think I won't smoke you out of that alley. This time Natsu's threats seemed to work, as a hooded figure stepped out into the street.
What the hell do you think you're doing, following Luce around like this?
Natsu was instantly on edge when the hooded figure began to walk towards them.
Oi! Stay the hell back. I'm warning you. Don't, Natsu! Lucy yelled, grabbing a hold of the dual dragon slayer's arm. Seeing the perplexed look in Lucy's eyes, Natsu relented and doused the flames covering his fists. This person, I don't think they're here to hurt me.
Stepping away from her lover, Lucy cautiously began to approach the hooded figure.
Who are you? It's me,
the mystery figure said, as they reached up and pulled down their hood.
Both Lucy and Natsu were shocked to see that it was the blonde mage's father.
But what really surprised them was how haggard the man looked. His hair was long and dirty, with an unkempt beard and mustache. The suit he wore was unwashed and covered in stains, while also being torn in several places.
It's your daddy. What the hell?
Natsu breathed out, as his eyes widened in shock.
There's no fucking way. That can't be true.
Lucy muttered, hardly believing that the man before her was really her father.
What are you doing here? No, wait. First, what the hell happened to you? Your clothes, your hair, you look terrible. That's just the thing,
Jude said, before he hung his head and released a heavy sigh. Heartfilia Railways was bought out right from under me. My business, our home, my money, everything is gone.
That can't be. Lucy muttered, tightly balling her fists.
I mortgaged all my private assets, Jude said, as he grit his teeth in frustration. I was an idiot to put all I had into my work.
Wait. Before you say anything else.
Lucy cut her father off, looking at him with tears forming in the corners of her eyes.
What about Mother's grave? Don't worry,
Jude replied, as he handed his daughter a small slip of paper.
It's been moved here.
Lucy had a sad look in her eyes, as she unfolded the paper and read the address. You know, I should be crying right now, but this whole situation is just laughable. That vast wealth simply vanished in one fateful instant.
Years' worth of achievements, gone overnight. My money. The money I worked for to the point of sacrificing my home. It's so funny. Go on and laugh. Ah ha ha ha. Dad, what are you really doing here?
Lucy asked, feeling rather uncomfortable after seeing her father acting almost deranged.
This isn't like you. I just wanted to see my daughter's face,
Jude said with a soft smile, as he rubbed the back of his head.
Is that so wrong, Lucy? Something feels off,
Natsu thought, his eye narrowing in suspicion. I know he's Luce's dad, but what is this bastard really after?
What are you talking about, now of all times?
Lucy asked, as she took a hesitant step away from her father.
I thought I told you to leave Fairy Tale alone. Even if I wanted to, I don't have the power or influence to do that now, Jude said, shooting Natsu a nasty glare, before turning back to face Lucy. I just wanted to see my daughter.
Jude chuckled nervously when he saw the frown on his daughter's face.
Please don't look at me like that.
I'll admit that I've made some stupid mistakes, it's my fault.
I don't plan on staying here very long. I've decided to join the Merchant Guild in Akalitha. I'm going to completely start over.
Akalitha? Lucy asked in a confused tone as she quirked an eyebrow.
I've never heard of that town. It's a few miles west of here.
Jude explained, before releasing a light sigh.
You can't really miss it. I see.
Lucy muttered, as she lowered her head slightly, a small smile on her face.
Well, that's good to dash. And so, Lucy,
Jude said, cutting his daughter off and stepping closer to her.
To get back on my feet, I'm going to need some money.
Lucy's eyes widened in a mixture of shock and disappointment when she heard her father say this.
Just 10,000 jewels will be fine. You'll lend it to me, right? Here it is.
Natsu thought, as he released a low growl, preparing to jump in at any moment. I had a feeling this guy was lying from the start.
I don't have a large amount of jewels like that. Lucy tried to explain, tightly gripping the strap of her purse.
I barely have enough to pay 4
large amounts.
I'm only talking about a small loan of 10,000 jewels. Jude exclaimed, as his tone quickly started to become angry.
You're my daughter. You should be able to pay that much up front. And don't give me any bullshit about not having any money.
I overheard you and your friends talking about the job you're going on tomorrow.
A 9 million jewel reward. Don't try to trick me, girl.
What are you saying? How can you say something like that? Lucy said, taking another step away from her father, as she began to feel tears forming in her eyes.
Money. Here I am swallowing my pride and asking you nicely. I'm practically groveling here.
Jude roared, which caused Lucy to slightly shake in fear.
Now do your duty and hand it over. Now.
Hearing Lucy begin to sniffle and fight back tears only served to further enrage Jude. You ungrateful little, do as your dash. Jude was cut off mid-sentence when a fist smashed into his cheek, instantly sending the man crashing to the ground. Holding his swelling cheek, Jude looked up and was terrified to see Natsu standing over him, his eyes alit with fury.
Why you? What do you think, Dash?
I was going to sit back and let Luce handle this, because this is something she should deal with by herself, but after hearing you say those awful things to your own daughter,
Natsu said, as he yanked Jude up by his collar. I can't just stand back anymore.
Jude gasped in fear when he saw the anger burning in Natsu's eyes.
How dare you lie to your daughter like that? Did you see how happy she looked, thinking you had actually came all the way here just to see her? But no. You used it as an excuse to try and extort money from her.
Uttering a throaty growl, Natsu roughly tossed Jude onto the ground. When I last saw you, I thought you were a giant asshole, but I never dreamed you'd stoop this low and look so pathetic. Natsu's words seemed to sting Jude harder than his fist, causing the older man to grit his teeth in frustration. Reaching into his vest pocket, Natsu pulled out a small sack and tossed it to Jude.
Here. There's 5,000 jewels in there. Get something to eat, clean yourself up and leave this town.
And I meant what I said last time, stay the hell away from Luce for a while. The only reason I'm not beating the hell out of you right now is because you're her father, and I respect the bonds between family. With one last piercing glare, Natsu turned his back to Jude, leaving him with one last remark.
Lately, you've only been hurting your daughter. As a father, you should let that sink in.
Jude simply stared at Natsu in utter shock for several moments, before lowering his gaze down to the bag of money in front of him. Despite being desperate for cash, Jude absolutely resented the dual dragon slayer for giving him the jewels. However, Jude truly was desperate, so he begrudgingly grabbed the money and got back onto his feet. Flipping his hood back up, Jude walked away down the street, not even sparing a glance back.
Luce, I'm sorry you had to see that.
Natsu said, as he hung his head in shame. I know you don't like it when Dash the pink-haired dragon slayer was cut off when Lucy suddenly tightly hugged him, burying her head into his chest. Natsu felt his heart ache when he felt Lucy's hot tears strike his skin. Not knowing what else to do, Natsu grabbed a hold of his mate and pulled her closer, lovingly stroking her head.
He's the worst, Lucy said between sobs, tightly balling her fists. The absolute worst. The next morning, Fairy Tale Guild Hall. You ready for our job, Luce?
Natsu asked, as he wrapped a comforting arm around the busty blonde's shoulders.
And, are you still upset about what happened with your dad? I'm fine, Natsu,
Lucy said, flashing her mate a small smile, as she leaned closer to him and rested her head on his shoulder.
I just don't really want to talk about it right now. Okay, but when you're ready you can talk to me, or even Urza and Mira.
Natsu replied with a frown. He didn't miss the sad tone in Lucy's voice or the downcast look in her normally bright eyes.
I'll go get Urza, then we can dash. Oi! Flame brain!
Gray exclaimed from across the guild hall, storming over towards the dual dragon slayer.
What's this about you going on a mission without me? I thought I was a part of your team now. Slow down, Gray,
Urza said in a calm tone, as she stepped in between Natsu and Gray, tugging her usual cart full of luggage.
Natsu didn't have a choice.
Bullshit!
Gray fired back, slamming his fist onto the table next to him. He's just pissed at me for some reason and is acting like a baby. I am pissed at you, but not for the reasons you're probably thinking of, Natsu thought, as he released a light sigh. Slowly getting out his seat, Natsu walked over to Gray and showed him the request flyer. You can read, right?
Then read the details of this request. Gray looked at Natsu suspiciously for a moment, before snatching the flyer from him. Quickly scanning through the flyer, Gray's eyes slowly widened in surprise.
See? I'm not trying to leave you out on purpose, Ice Princess. What is this horse shit?
Gray growled, roughly handing the flyer back to Natsu.
What's this guy's deal? Only letting 3 people on this mission, he even asked for you specifically. What the hell makes you so special? I'm just as strong as you are. This little comment caused Natsu to scoff, earning him a fierce glare from the Ice Mage. I oughta give this guy a piece of my mind. Those two,
Lucy thought with a smile, as she watched Natsu and Gray continue to bicker. However, in between the shouts and insults, Lucy's newly enhanced hearing picked up on another conversation coming from the bar behind her.
Hey, did you hear about what's going on in Akalifa?
A fairy tale mage asked the mage sitting next to him.
You mean how a violent gang took over the merchant guild there? Yeah, that's pretty messed up,
the other mage replied, taking a sip of his beer.
Nah man, you got it wrong,
the first mage explained, as he leaned closer to his friend.
It ain't some gang, it's the Dark Guild Naked Mummy. You're joking, the other mage blurted out in shock, slamming his beer mug onto the bar. Then even the army won't be able to stop them. Akalifa, that's where.
Lucy's eyes widened in fear when she remembered that was where her father was supposed to be going.
The blonde celestial spirit mage was prepared to ignore what she had overheard and go on her mission.
But something Natsu had said the previous night had struck a chord in her.
Natsu was right, even though that man has treated me terribly, this is something I need to deal with.
Tightly balling her fists, Lucy rose from her seat and darted towards the bar. With a determined look in her eyes, she slammed her hands onto the bar's counter.
Where's Akalifa?
Learning the town's location from the 2 mages at the bar, Lucy quickly grabbed her purse and dashed towards the guild's front door.
Hey Lucy, where are you going? Urza asked, momentarily stopping the celestial spirit mage in her tracks. We're about to head out for our job. Sorry,
was all Lucy said before she sprinted out of the guild.
I have an errand to run. What about your rent?
Urza exclaimed, as she began to run after her fellow mate. However, she was stopped when a firm hand gripped her shoulder. Turning her head, Urza was surprised to see that it was Natsu who had stopped her.
Natsu? Shouldn't we be going after her? Just let her go, Urza, Natsu said, staring in the direction Lucy had run off in.
Whatever Lucy's doing, it must be really important, so let's just let her handle this one on her own. The scarlet-haired knight stared at Natsu for several moments, before reluctantly nodding her head. Seeing that Urza had dropped the subject, Natsu turned to face Gray. "Well, Ice Princess, looks like you're getting your wish, 'cause you're taking Luce's place on this mission." Gray looked as if he was about to celebrate, but Natsu quickly cut him off. "However, you're giving up a portion of your reward money to give to Luce. Urza and I will do the same thing, so if you want to come along, that's the condition." "Damn it!" Gray grunted, as he shoved his hands into his pockets. "Fine, I'll give Lucy some of my cut, it's still a lot of money either way." "All right," Natsu said with a toothy grin, roughly slapping Gray on the back. "Go pack your shit, I'll stall our client until you get there." Several hours later, outside Love and Lucky Merchant Guild in Akalifa. When Lucy arrived in Akalifa, she learned where the local merchant guild was located and quickly made her way there. When Lucy arrived at the Love and Lucky Merchant Guild, she saw that a large crowd had already gathered outside, with army soldiers forcing people back. "What's happening to the hostages? You have to save them, please. My husband is in there. Everyone calm down. We're getting help from a nearby mage guild. It's very dangerous here. So please disperse." "Father," Lucy muttered, as she watched the gathered crowd begin to walk away from the guild. "Princess." Looking down, Lucy squeaked in surprise when she saw that Virgo had appeared from the ground in between her legs. "I successfully created a safe passage from here into the guild." "Thank you, Virgo," Lucy exclaimed with a bright smile. "You did a great job." "Is that my punishment?" Virgo asked in a confused tone, as she cocked her head. "No, I'm praising you," Lucy replied in a frustration, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Why do all my spirits have to be so weird? Princess, I must warn you that there are many wizards inside," Virgo explained in a serious tone, as she clasped her hands together. "I wonder what we can do on our own. Wouldn't it have been more advisable to bring along Natsu-san and Urza-san? We'll do whatever we can, Virgo. Let's go," Lucy exclaimed, hopping into the hole her celestial spirit had made. "Besides, there's something that I have to do on my own." Same time, inside the Love and Lucky Merchant Guild. "I don't fucking get it," the lead thug exclaimed, as he riffled through a small pile of money. "This place is a merchant guild, right? I thought they'd have a shitload of cash." "Bah! I told you from the start that we should have just robbed a bank," a second, heavily tattooed, thug retorted, watching as another bag of money was emptied onto the pile. "Shut your fucking trap," the lead thug roared, as his body shook in a mix of fear and anger. "We're out of damn time. Just stuff all the cash we found into our bags." "Yes, sir," the rest of the criminals yelled, quickly shoving any money they had gathered into bags. "Now the rest of you," the lead thug said, as he slowly walked over towards the hostages, all them tied up with their mouths covered. Growling in frustration, the lead thug fired his shotgun into the ceiling, causing most of the hostages to release muffled screams of fear. "Shut the fuck up, or you're all dead." As the head thug walked down the row of hostages, he noticed that a little boy was shaking uncontrollably and whimpering constantly. "Oi, you little shit, wanna die?" This question only made young boy more afraid, causing tears to being falling from his eyes. The head thug's eyes widened in rage, as he pointed his gun at the crying child. "Oh, so you do wanna die, you little bastard? Yo, stop it, boss. He's just a kid. We don't have time for this bullshit," the head thug exclaimed, firing a shot at the child without hesitation. However, everyone in the guild was shocked when a massive cow-like man suddenly appeared in front of the young boy, blocking the shotgun pellets with a large axe. "What the fuck? What the hell is that thing? Who cares? How the fuck did it get in here? You guys have gone way too far," a new, feminine voice exclaimed from the other side of the guild. Turning towards where the voice came from, all the dark mages were surprised to see that a blonde woman was now standing in the guild with them. "What? Now how did this girl get in here? Hey! That's a mage from an official guild," the head thug announced, spotting the pink guild mark on the girl's hand. "Damn it!
If you won't surrender quietly, you'll end up getting hurt," Lucy yelled, as she pulled out 2 of her gold celestial gate keys. "Cancer. Sagittarius. Take these assholes down." In a flash of golden light, both zodiac spirits appeared in front of their master. Then, almost as swiftly as they appeared, Sagittarius and Cancer dispatched most of the dark mages, with Cancer slicing through them using his scissor, while Sagittarius took down the stragglers with volleys of arrows. Once the celestial spirits were finished, the only dark mage left standing was their leader. "Now it's time to finish this." Most of the hostages watched in awe, waiting for Lucy to unleash some massive magic spell to take the thug's leader down. However, they were quite surprised by what she actually did. Lucy kick. Sprinting up to the thug leader as he fumbled with his shotgun, Lucy hit him with a powerful roundhouse kick, her boot heel smashing into his jaw. The shockingly powerful kick instantly floored the dark mage, rendering him unconscious. Releasing a sigh, Lucy wiped some sweat off her brow, a bright smile on her face. "I can definitely get things done when I need to." However, Lucy's excitement was short-lived, as she quickly remembered why she was at the Merchant Guild in the first place. Father. Running up to the hostages, who were now free from their bindings, Lucy began to search for her father. But her search was halted when she was mobbed by the thankful people she had saved. After awkwardly accepting the many thanks, Lucy eventually made her way outside Love and Lucky, not spotting her father anywhere within the guild. Why wasn't he in there? Come on, damn it! Are you safe or not? Huffing in irritation, Lucy tightly balled her fists and yelled out as loud as she could. "Father!" "Lucy?" A familiar and confused voice asked from behind the blonde celestial spirit mage. Whipping around, Lucy was shocked to see that her father was standing right behind her. "Is that you?" Lucy exclaimed, her eyes widening in surprise. "Wait, did you just get here?" "Yeah." Jude replied simply, as he quirked an eyebrow. "I spent most of the money your pink-haired friend gave me, so I had to walk all the way here. So I was worried about nothing." Lucy screamed in her head, tugging on some of her hair in frustration. "What are you doing here?" Jude asked, as he rubbed the back of his head. "I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." "What do you mean, what?" Lucy exclaimed, stomping her foot on the ground. "I overheard that the guild you were joining was under attack by dark mages." "Huh?" Jude muttered, as he looked past his daughter, finally noticing the crowd of people and soldiers outside the Merchant Guild. "Oh, so you came because you were worried about your old man?" "Gah! Forget about it!" Lucy exclaimed, her face flushing bright red in embarrassment, as she quickly turned away from her father. "I'll see you later." "Is that so?" Jude said quietly, as he lowered his head. "Thank you, Lucy. The fact that you came all the way here, it makes me happy. Don't get any weird ideas," Lucy said with tightly balled fists, not turning to face her father. "It's not like I've forgiven you for everything you've done." "Yes, I understand, it's only natural that you'd feel that way," Jude said, as a sad smile spread across his face. "I traveled a long road to get here, and during that time I did a lot of thinking, especially about what that boy Natsu said to me." Lucy's eyes widened slightly at the mention of her mate's name. "I came to realize that he was right. All I've done recently is hurt you, and for that I apologize, especially for my behavior yesterday. Some strange desperation came over me. I regret that embarrassing behavior. From now on I intend to be a new man. I managed to make it here with practically no money. I'm sure that I can accomplish anything I set my mind to." Clasping a hand over his heart, Jude tightly gripped the fabric of his tattered cloak. "You know, this is the guild where I met your mother." The blonde celestial spirit mage visibly perked up when her father said this. "Just when I was ready to head out on my own, we found out that your mother was pregnant with you. We both made the decision to leave the guild then. At the time, one of the letters from the guild's sign was missing. The K in Lucky had fallen off, spelling Lucy. We thought that it was pretty funny, so we then decided that if we had a girl, we'd name her Lucy." "What kind of story is that?"
Lucy asked, turning to face her face, a teasing grin on her face.
You shouldn't decide a girl's name on a whim like that.
Heh, I guess you're right. Jude lightly laughed, as he rubbed the back of his neck.
I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry about it, now I have another story to remember you and Mom by. Lucy said with a smile, turning away from her father once again. With a wave, the blonde celestial spirit mage began to walk down the road. Well, take care, father. Her smile turning into a wide grin, Lucy broke out into a full sprint.
Maybe if I'm quick enough I can catch up with Natsu and the others.
That girl? Jude muttered quietly, as he watched his daughter disappear into the distance. Releasing a light sigh, Jude stared up at the clear sky overhead. Layla, I've been such a fool. I hope you watch over our daughter, and all her friends too.
Same time, unknown location.
Why are you in such a rush, child? A small, white flying cat scolded, watching as a blue-haired teenage girl dashed around the small room they were in, practically buzzing with excitement. We aren't supposed to leave for another 2 days. I know, Carla, but I just can't help it. The blue-haired girl exclaimed with a bright smile, as she spun on her heel to face the floating white cat. I just have this feeling that something great is going to happen on this job. All of a sudden the girl became quite shy, her cheeks tinting pink. Besides, we're supposed to be working with fairy tale mages on this job. And one of the mages in fairy tale sounds just like. The blue-haired teenager couldn't even finish her sentence, as she buried her head in her hands to hide her embarrassed face. Anyways, he might be there, and it's been so long since I saw him.
Oh, Wendy.
Carla muttered, slowly shaking her head and crossing her arms over her chest. Even after almost 7 years, you still can't get that boy out of your mind. That wraps up this part of What If Natsu Had Dual Elements.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.